Valentine's Day, also called Saint Valentine's Day or the Feast of Saint Valentine, is celebrated annually on February 14. It originated as a Christian feast day honoring one or two early Christian martyrs named Saint Valentine and, through later folk traditions, has become a significant cultural, religious, and commercial celebration of romance and love in many regions of the world. There are a number of martyrdom stories associated with various Valentines connected to February 14, including an account of the imprisonment of Saint Valentine of Rome for ministering to Christians persecuted under the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. According to an early tradition, Saint Valentine restored sight to the blind daughter of his jailer. Numerous later additions to the legend have better related it to the theme of love. An 18th century embellishment to the legend claims he wrote the jailer's daughter a letter signed Your Valentine as a farewell before his execution. Another tradition posits that Saint Valentine performed weddings for Christian soldiers who were forbidden to marry. The 8th century Gelasian Sacramentary recorded the celebration of the Feast of Saint Valentine on February 14. The day became associated with romantic love in the 14th and 15th centuries when notions of courtly love flourished, apparently by association with the lovebirds of early spring. In 18th century England, it grew into an occasion in which couples expressed their love for each other by presenting flowers, offering confectionery, and sending greeting cards. Valentine's Day symbols that are used today include the heart-shaped outline, doves, and the figure of the winged Cupid. Since the 19th century, handwritten valentines have given way to mass-produced greeting cards. In Italy, Saint Valentine's keys are given to lovers as a romantic symbol and an invitation to unlock the giver's heart, as well as to children to ward off epilepsy. Saint Valentine's Day is not a public holiday in any country, although it is an official feast day in the Anglican Communion and the Lutheran Church. Many parts of the Eastern Orthodox Church also celebrate Saint Valentine's Day on July 6 in honor of Roman presbyter Saint Valentine, and on July 30 in honor of Hieromartyr Valentine, the Bishop of Interamna. Identification. Saint Valentine does not occur in the earliest list of Roman martyrs, the chronography of 354, although the patron of the chronography's compilation was a wealthy Roman Christian named Valentinus. However, it is found in the Martyrologium Hieronymianum, which was compiled between 460 and 544 from earlier local sources. The Feast of Saint Valentine of February 14 was first established in 496 by Pope Gelasius I, who included Valentine among all those, whose names are justly reverenced among men, but whose acts are known only to God. The Catholic Encyclopedia and other hagiographical sources speak of 3 Saints Valentine that appear in connection with February 14. One was a Roman priest, another the Bishop of Interamna, both buried along the Via Flaminia outside Rome, at different distances from the city. The third was said to be a saint who suffered on the same day with a number of companions in the Roman province of Africa, of whom nothing else is known. Though the extant accounts of the martyrdoms of the first 2 listed saints are of a late date and contain legendary elements, a common nucleus of fact may underlie the 2 accounts and they may refer to a single person. According to the official biography of the Diocese of Terni, Bishop Valentine was born and lived in Interamna, and while on a temporary stay in Rome he was imprisoned, tortured, and martyred there on February 14, 269. His body was hastily buried at a nearby cemetery, and a few nights later his disciples retrieved his body and returned him home. The Roman Martyrology, the Catholic Church's official list of recognized saints, for February 14 gives only one Saint Valentine, a martyr who died on the Via Flaminia. The name Valentine, derived from valens, was popular in late antiquity. About 11 other saints having the name Valentine are commemorated in the Roman Catholic Church. Some Eastern churches of the Western Rite may provide still other different lists of Saint Valentines. The Roman Martyrology lists only 7 who died on days other than February 14. a priest from Viterbo, Valentine of Passau, papal missionary bishop to Rhaetia, among first patrons of Passau, and later hermit in Zenoberg, near Mainz, South Tyrol, Italy, where he died in 475, a 5th century priest and hermit, a Spanish hermit who died in about 715, Valentine Berrio Ochoa, martyred in 1861, and Valentine González Gómez, martyred in 1936. It also lists a virgin, Saint Valentina, who was martyred in 308 in Caesarea, Palestine. Hagiography and testimony. The inconsistency in the identification of the saint is replicated in the various vitae that are ascribed to him. A common hagiography describes Saint Valentine as a priest of Rome or as the former bishop of Terni, an important town of Umbria, in central Italy. While under house arrest of Judge Astrius, and discussing his faith with him, Valentinus was discussing the validity of Jesus. The judge put Valentinus to the test and brought to him the judge's adopted blind daughter. If Valentinus succeeded in restoring the girl's sight, Astrius would do whatever he asked. Valentinus, praying to God, laid his hands on her eyes and the child's vision was restored. Immediately humbled, the judge asked Valentinus what he should do. Valentinus replied that all of the idols around the judge's house should be broken, and that the judge should fast for 3 days and then undergo the Christian sacrament of baptism. The judge obeyed and, as a result of his fasting and prayer, freed all the Christian inmates under his authority. The judge, his family, and his 44-member household of adult family members and servants were baptized. Valentinus was later arrested again for continuing to evangelize and was sent to the prefect of Rome, to the Emperor Claudius Gothicus himself. Claudius took a liking to him until Valentinus tried to convince Claudius to embrace Christianity, whereupon Claudius refused and condemned Valentinus to death, commanding that Valentinus either renounce his faith or he would be beaten with clubs and beheaded. Valentinus refused and Claudius' command was executed outside the Flaminian Gate February 14, 269. An embellishment to this account states that before his execution, Saint Valentine wrote a note to Astrius's daughter signed "From your Valentine," which is said to have inspired today's romantic missives. The Legenda Aurea of Jacobus de Voragine, compiled about 1260 and one of the most read books of the High Middle Ages, gives sufficient details of the saints for each day of the liturgical year to inspire a homily on each occasion. The very brief Vita of Saint Valentine states that he was executed for refusing to deny Christ by the order of the Emperor Claudius in the year 269. Before his head was cut off, this Valentine restored sight and hearing to the daughter of his jailer. Jacobus makes a play with the etymology of Valentine, as containing valor. A popularly ascribed hagiographical identity appears in the Nuremberg Chronicle. Alongside a woodcut portrait of Valentine, the text states that he was a Roman priest martyred during the reign of Claudius Gothicus. He was arrested and imprisoned upon being caught marrying Christian couples and otherwise aiding Christians who were at the time being persecuted by Claudius in Rome. Helping Christians at this time was considered a crime. Claudius took a liking to this prisoner. However, when Valentinus tried to convert the emperor, he was condemned to death. He was beaten with clubs and stones. When that failed to kill him, he was beheaded outside the Flaminian Gate. Various dates are given for the martyrdom or martyrdoms: 269, 270, or 273. There are many other legends behind Saint Valentine. One is that in the 3rd century AD it is said that Valentine, who was a priest, defied the order of the Emperor Claudius and secretly performed Christian weddings for couples, allowing the husbands involved to escape conscription into the pagan army. This legend claims that soldiers were sparse at this time, so this was a big inconvenience to the emperor. The account mentions that in order to remind these men of their vows and God's love, Saint Valentine is said to have cut hearts from parchment, giving them to these persecuted Christians, a possible origin of the widespread use of hearts on Saint Valentine's Day. Churches named after Saint Valentine. There are many churches dedicated to Saint Valentine in countries such as Italy. Saint Valentine was venerated no more than other Christian martyrs and saints. A 5th or 6th century work called Passio Mariae et Marthi made up a legend about Saint Valentine's Basilica being dedicated to Saint Valentine in Rome. A later Passio repeated the legend and added the adornment that Pope Julius I had built the ancient Basilica S. Valentini Extraportum on top of his sepulchre, in the Via Flaminia. This church was really named after a 4th century tribune called Valentino, who donated the land on which it is built. It hosted the martyrs' relics until the 13th century, when they were transferred to Santa Prassede, and the ancient basilica decayed. St. Valentine's Church in Rome, built in 1960 for the needs of the Olympic Village, continues as a modern, well-visited parish church. St. Valentine's Day. Saint Valentine of Rome was martyred on February 14 in AD 269. The Feast of Saint Valentine, also known as Saint Valentine's Day, was established by Pope Gelasius I in AD 496 to be celebrated on February 14 in honor of the Christian martyr. February 14 is Saint Valentine's Day in the Lutheran calendar of saints. The Church of England had him in its pre-Reformation calendars, and restored his mention as bishop and martyr in its 1661-62 Book of Common Prayer, and most provinces of the Anglican Communion celebrate his feast. The Roman Catholic Church includes him in its official list of saints, the Roman Martyrology. He was also in the general Roman calendar for celebration as a simple feast until 1955. When Pope Pius XII reduced all such feasts to just a commemoration within another celebration. The 1969 revision of the general Roman calendar removed even this mention, leaving it for inclusion only in local calendars such as that of Bolzan, Malta. His commemoration was still in the 1962 Roman Missal and is thus observed also by those who, in the circumstances indicated in Pope Benedict XVI's 2007 Motu Proprio Summarum Pontificum, use that edition. Valentine is remembered in the Church of England with a commemoration on 14 February. July 6 is the date on which the Eastern Orthodox Church celebrates the Roman presbyter Valentine. On July 30 it observes the feast of the Hieromartyr Valentine, Bishop of Interamna. Members of the Greek Orthodox Church named Valentinos or Valentina may observe their name day on the Western ecclesiastical calendar date of February 14. English 18th century antiquarians Alban Butler and Francis Dowse, noting the obscurity of Saint Valentine's identity, suggested that Saint Valentine's Day was created as an attempt to supersede the pagan holiday of Lupercalia. This idea has lately been dismissed by academics and researchers, such as Professor Jack B. Orrick of the University of Kansas, Henry Ansgar Kelly of the University of California, Los Angeles, and Associate Professor Michael Matthew Kaler of the Masaryk University. Many of the current legends that characterize Saint Valentine were invented in the 14th century in England, notably by Geoffrey Chaucer and his circle, when the feast day of February 14 first became associated with romantic love. Orrick charges that the traditions associated with Valentine's Day, documented in Geoffrey Chaucer's Parliament of Fowls and set in the fictional context of an old tradition, did not exist before Chaucer. He argues that the speculative explanation of sentimental customs, posing as historical fact, had their origins among 18th century antiquaries, notably Alban Butler, the author of Butler's Lives of Saints, and have been perpetuated even by respectable modern scholars. In the French 14th century manuscript Illumination from Avis des Saints, Saint Valentine, Bishop of Terni, oversees the construction of his basilica at Terni. There is no suggestion here that the bishop was a patron of lovers. During the Middle Ages, it was believed that birds paired in mid-February. This was then associated with the romance of Valentine. Although these legends differ, Valentine's Day is widely recognized as a day for romance and devotion.